All right, now on the back of that interview with SABC News International editor, joining us to discuss the growing fears about a U.S. economic slowdown is Dr. Lumkile Mondi. He's an economist. Now, the big question is whether this current condition could reverberate across the global financial markets, particularly emerging markets. Good evening, Doctor. Thank you very much for joining us on The Full View. So stocks around the world are tumbling with the growing fears of a slowdown in America's economy. What is this slowdown attributed to?
Good evening, Mfundo, and to the viewers. More importantly, it is the fear that emanates from the U.S. Of very poor data. We saw last week when the non-farm payroll came out that the information sector specifically lost a number of jobs because of the difficulties which are being faced in that space. I just want to remind some of the viewers that the stock in general, not only in America, in Europe and elsewhere, were driven by the demand for information technology stock, specifically the Magnificent Seven. These are Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, as well as Tesla. They're referred to as Magnificent Seven. So those basically together with the non-farm payroll going down, and unemployment also rising to high levels of about 4.3% in the U.S. compared to 3.5%, are the ones that are stalking the market. And we expect this to continue for a while, firstly because of what Sophie has just said, the continuing war in the Middle East, the tensions in Europe, mainly the Ukraine-Russia war, but also internally in Europe, with rising racial tension that are playing themselves in many UK cities. And finally, the uncertainty in relation as to who is going to be president in the US and what stance will they take internally, as well as to these global challenges that I've just mentioned, and Sophie went into detail a few minutes ago.
I suppose Donald Trump is milking this for all it is, because he's consistently stated that a Biden administration was no good for the economy. And now if you're looking at the economy, or at least jobs, unemployment increasing from 4.1 to 4.3, that would mean, at least for him, he's got something to go to the electorate with. But the big question is the U.S. really heading for a recession, and how would that affect the rest of us, specifically in the South?
Let me put it this way. Before this data last week, there were about 15% probabilities of a recession in the U.S. Now, people are talking about 5%, and the implications are huge, particularly for the world economy, given that it will mean, firstly, that the U.S. has to move to allow some new areas to grow, specifically the consumer to start spending. So we're expecting about 1.5 basis point cut rate, and people are talking about a much faster move by the Fed to ensure that you can give people money to drive demand again, and therefore try and stave off any possible downturn or recession, as people are saying.
All right, Doctor, pardon me for interjecting there. Are you saying there's a possibility, a strong likelihood of interest rates being cut?
Very aggressively. So we're expecting anything between 0.75 basis point to 1% in the next few weeks. Others are pushing for an emergency meeting by the Fed, which will have huge positive spillovers for South Africans, because we expect the Reserve Bank in South Africa to respond accordingly. But for us, for different reasons, given that the inflation's come far below our target of 6%. But more importantly, also positive for South Africa, because it will also give money to many South African consumers and relief to those highly indebted individuals and firms. But I think one point which is important, given that the president and the GNU are pushing for growth, what's going to give us? It's going to give us also access to cheaper money, because as interest rates come down, if South Africa continues doing the things that's been doing in the past few months, specifically the rule of law, constitutionalism, but more importantly, the GNU sticking together, that will continue to give positive signals to the global market. In doing so, allowing many of our firms, including government, to go and borrow cheaply in an environment of lower interest rate internationally, as Fed and other institutions last week with the UK Treasury also and the Bank of England lowering interest rates. So we expect this to be very positive for South African borrowers in international markets.
All right, Doctor, thank you very much for your insights this evening. That's Dr. Lumkile Mondi speaking to us as U.S. recession fears send tremendous, or rather the fears of a slowdown in the economy send tremendous fears across the globe.